Princess Celestina, how could you hold hands with a man of all people? You harlot. I can't believe she would do such an outlandish action in a game themed around purity. What's up, guys? You're here with CozierLobsters, and today we're going to be reviewing Subverse, which got its 1.0 update back in November. Man, I can't believe that I first touched this game around 3 years ago. But the main story is complete and ready for my enjoyment. But before I get too ahead of myself, this is a space sci-fi game where you venture forth and explore the galaxy that has a whole lot of sexual pent-up frustration. I don't think I even need to give the spiel this time about this game being a porn game. If you know anything about this game, it is a porn game. The main story follows the captain of the Mary Celeste, which is this Aussie cunt.
G'day, mates. Ready to start some trouble?
Who is a alcoholic drug addict who chose a life of being a hideaway smuggler, but is probably one of the best pilots in the whole galaxy of Prodigium. He is tasked with, forced into, gathering key individual women to join his crew and lead a revolution against the government body that is controlling the galaxy, called the Imperium. A very oppressive regime that follows a dogmatic religion called the Veil, and forces everyone in the galaxy to follow it. So, the Imperium of Man. You start with a small crew of just two, Demi, the robotic mainframe of the Mary Celeste, and Dr. Lillian, who is a scientist that designs genetic monstrosities that the crew will use for the revolution. You will slowly start filling out the Mary Celeste, going from a quiet, lonely place to a location that is the very embodiment of your adventure. On your adventures, you'll meet different races, fight different factions, and learn all about the history of the whole galaxy, all set in the tone of a middle schooler style of humor. I don't think they go more than a few sentences at a time without ever mentioning sex, drugs, or something that breaks the fourth wall, which you can expect for the whole runtime of the game. It doesn't matter if it's the captain of the Mary Celeste.
Food is Dalek's thing. I'm the one responsible for all the species of amphibious lesbians rubbing their webbed feet on each other's titties.
One of the faction leaders.
Show me your dick.
Or a random NPC.
Hey, right back at ya, you two-bit pretty boy conquistador. Ain't nothing wrong with my compound.
The whole galaxy runs on the same brainwave here. But I have a brain that's the size of a pea, and I love this style of comedy. I think a lot of your mileage will vary with this depending on how many references you can pick up, because the game is packed full of them. Some are very obvious, like Gordon Ramsay and Joe Rogan, but others like what happened to Randy Pitchford a few years back, or the Tim Pool reference where he's bitching about them using the name Subverse because he had some affiliation with the name, feels a little bit less known. Understanding these references isn't needed to enjoy these scenes, but it does make them better knowing the context. The game's visuals are really good in what makes it immediately pop out, with the space sections looking particularly good with some of the really cool backdrops you fight over. Character models look really nice and clean, not like your average new and trending porn game on Steam, though I think someone was having a little too much fun with the bloom effect. The majority of the story is told in a visual novel kind of way, with every character having great voices behind them. Hell, I don't think half the jokes would have landed if it wasn't for those guys. The gameplay isn't just a visual novel though. You do get to take control of the Mary Celeste and select different nebulas that you want to explore. When you start the game, you only have one area to choose from, but as you start completing acts of the story, newer nebulas will open up. Each nebula holds a boatload of solar systems with around 3 to 7 navigation points. So you basically go through each system scanning these points of interest and investigating them. These places will usually have some type of description attached to them. These descriptions can be anything from some world building to other just referencing other types of media, or it can just be a joke. I think my main complaint about these is that some of these are like miniature essays, and you'll be scanning a lot of these back to back. So they all kind of end up blending together, and a lot of them don't connect to anything bigger. Along with the description, you usually have 3 possible options when you investigate a location. You will either have to do a turn-based strategy combat, the space combat, or do an investigation. Let's start with my favorite option, the turn-based strategy combat, which I will apologize now if you don't get a good look at the mantics during this section. Let's just say they're a little excited to be in combat. Here you play on a grid field with your crew to take down a group of enemies, a more simplified version of XCOM, I would say. The combat here is really simple. Everybody on the board has a turn order, and are only able to perform an action during their turn, which they can move, attack, defend, or wait until later. Units have 3 types of health bars, which are shields, armor, and health. which when they all go 0, they go kablooey. Before you start these levels, you will select the leader, which is one of the waifus, and select 3 mantics to complete a team. Each unit has a specialty, so one might be good at taking down shields, while another might be good at drawing aggro from other units. It kinda comes down to their stats, passives, and abilities. Each unit also has an ultimate, which needs to be charged up before you can use them, which charges up whenever they take a hit, or if they hit somebody. The waifus usually have 2, one being a damage ability, while the other is more of a support ability. For the space combat, it starts off very similar. You pick your waifu and set out on a round-based top-down shooter. Once you clear a wave, another will spawn in until you beat all the waves, which the combat handles like fine butter here. The Phoenix feels great, you can easily control the ship to spin, dash, and glide all over the place. The ship has 2 fire modes. One is your primary, which is a vomit of bullets, while the other changes depending on which waifu you chose. These shots consume energy, which slowly recharges over time. Your ship also has a shield and a health bar. Shields can regenerate if they are damaged, while health can only be repaired with health drops. Finally, we have the investigation missions. Each waifu has a different set of traits that will be utilized to explore a location. Each of these locations will have their own set of tags with them, so it just kind of boils down to matching the most amount of tags together, which you get a little adventure story of what the waifu did on their investigation. And that's the 3 game modes. So you can expect the game cycle to be something like jump to a new solar system, scan it, do one of 3 mini-games for every location. There is only one itsy-bitsy problem with this. There are over 500 navigation points in the game. That's a fuck ton. I would say the game modes are evenly divided up. That means you could be playing each of these game modes over 100 times, and they don't get any more complicated than what I have explained. This is why I think the turn-based strategy is the best, because at least you can play around with the different unit compositions. But the space combat isn't so lucky. I don't feel it has changed at all since I played it in early access. Like, you have more waifus to choose from, but that only gives you one ability that is different every time. And the 5 different factions that you can fight don't change how you play at all. The fuckbots want to get close and physically fuck you. The pirates are clumsy to mid-range close fighters. The Kloi want to elegantly blast your ass from the sky with heat-seeking missiles and laser beams. The Sinu are a well-organized machine that makes shots appear from the ether. And the Waquaital spam their loads everywhere. At the end of the day, all factions just basically shoot at you and you just need to dodge it. The only way you can make this hard is by challenging yourself, like trying to figure out how close you can get to the enemy's keister without blowing up. There's no point in doing something like that because the game doesn't encourage you to do so. I was hoping that they would turn this into like an arcade shooter or something, like power-ups would drop from enemies or asteroids. Something like a pickup that would say, "Come-tastic," which would shoot bullets in all directions for a bit. Or maybe you can have multiple waifus join, so you can have multiple abilities or something. You can make something sexy happen with that, right? And not just slight power-up orbs that drop. They gave the girls a Super Saiyan transformation for the turn-based strategy. Why not the captain? At one point, I thought I was going stir-crazy by how much I was doing the same shit over and over again for what felt like little progress. Which is sad because they do have some really cool levels, but there's just so few and far between that it just doesn't matter. To be fair, you definitely do not need to explore every location to complete the story, or even do the side missions. I'm mainly just ranting because I want more from the gameplay. The only reason you would go through all this is either 1, you're insane, or 2, you're just trying to collect everything. Speaking of which, by clearing these navigation points is how you get anything and everything in the game. You'll always get some amount of credits, tech, or bio from each mission, which tech is used to upgrade the Phoenix. Wow, 5% more damage, ain't I lucky. Bio is used to unlock new mantics, and credits which are used for both are even more. You will find a ton of extra content here like trophies, boatload of behind-the-scene content. Depending on which waifu you chose for the investigation missions, you will get presents for them, which these gifts are supposed to be given to the girls during the date sections, which suck ass by the way. They just sit there and stare at you the whole time, just saying the one line of dialogue depending on the gift quality. I'm a big fan of visual novels, so I was hoping they would add events here and maybe multiple choice dialogue options. Hell, this should have been the place where you talk to them to learn more about their backstories. I like the setting of it here, but hearing the same voice line over and over. I wish they just added a button to give them all the gifts at one time. You also get XP from these missions for whatever girl you chose to raise their devotion level. Each girl has a devotion level which caps out at level 40. Them leveling up also gives you a hodgepodge of random crap, so every time they level up you usually get something like trophies, new hair colors and clothing, pin-up photos, exclusive audio clips, and dialogue options. You also unlock their Super Saiyan modes and exclusive missions for each of the girls here. This also affects their combat stats. The only exception to this is Demi. She levels up by finding components in space while you're exploring to upgrade her, which upgrades the stats of the Mary Celeste instead, since she doesn't participate in combat. Every level also gives you Pooter points to spend at Pandora. Oh yeah, I probably should talk about the main reason why everybody's here. Pandora is the main source of where you're going to be watching these sex scenes. Here you get to select any of the waifus that have joined the crew and watch a plethora of different scenes with them. Each scene having a different theme, whether that be with the captain, the girls, with each other, or them trying out the mantics. Each of these scenes being locked and costing Pooter points, or PP. There are two different types of quality scenes here. You either get a scene with one repeating motion, which costs 1 PP, or a scene that costs 2 PP with a fancy slider with a come button attached to it. The slider is like a 3-speed transmission, with only being able to adjust it to slow, medium, and fast. I think my main complaint about these scenes is that you have very little control over them. I would expect, since we're in a 3D environment, that I would be able to take control of the camera and whip that bitch around to see every possible angle I want, and not just this little pan slider that we get with a zoom in enhance function. If I want to see the captain's butthole, let me! With Pandora, you can select up to 5 scenes and load them into the middle slots in any order that you want, and just hit play. I feel like they kind of wanted people to make their own pornos here, like it's a build-a-porn, which the concept's kind of neat if you just want to see the sex, but it leaves the scenes kind of feeling lifeless a bit. For me, I'm more interested in how these scenes happen. Like, why is the Huntress being one-handed by the Hunchback of Notre Dame here? I would have just loved to see how these sex scenes happened, or at least get some interactions during the scenes, because I know they would have at least been kind of funny. For instance, each of the women that join the crew get an opening cinematic, and the one for the Huntress is great because her and the captain have been trying to kill each other throughout the whole game. So when she joins the crew and asks him to hate fuck her, but the captain's too tired, so he asks her to get him in the mood.
You're a spineless, hopeless, pathetic loser that even his mother didn't love enough to say goodbye to when she ran out on him. Also, was that good enough?
You bet your ass it was. Let's do this, you fucking psycho!
This scene makes me smile every time. I would trade half of these scenes in just to have this type of lead-in. There's over 200 of these scenes, which is a lot. Definitely if that's why you're buying these games, but I prefer something that gives these scenes a little more substance than a little text box about the scene itself. I'm going to go over more of the story during this section, so if you don't want any spoilers, then please jump to the timestamp here. I don't know if I should be impressed by how well the story manages to build up the world and the characters, or be disgusted by how boring and pointless everything seemed to build up to. The story is broken down into multiple acts, which is a slow burn for the first 2.5 arcs, which really isn't a bad thing. It's just the nature of these types of journeys where you need to go around building up power while building a picture of what's going on with the world itself. It also doesn't help that the first 4 women that join your crew all have the same theme to getting them, which is, if you scratch my back, I scratch yours. You have the pirate queen Caligion, who is a Veneran. Her goal is to find Mr. Snucklefucker's treasure. A dong-loving Cloy archer named Alicia. She wants to be broken out of jail and produce a porno in the most sacred place to the Cloy people. As a side note, this is the best arena for the turn-based strategy combat. You have the captain and Alicia just going at it in the middle of the map while the whole crew is fighting, just so the captain can finish.
Perhaps now would be an opportune time to execute a tactical pullout.
Next we have Terran the Neeks, who is a toy-loving master thief. She wants the greatest vibrator in the universe.
Dude, did you put this thing up your ass?
And we also have the alcoholic Teely princess named Sovalin, who wants to take the Teely Fighting Championship. She serves as the crew's demolition expert.
She did it. We're in. Captain.
Each of these characters are interesting in their own right because they are the introduction to the different races in the game, and they are the main insight on how each of their races are affected by the Imperium. Either through the main quest, like with Silva's race, they used to have giant massive orgy mating rituals, but that was disbanded by the Imperium, so now the Tealies have high suicide rates, make K-pop music, and have death matches to subvert those urges. You can also find out a bit through unlocking dialogue with their devotion levels, like with Kilijian, where you find out that the Venerans' homeworld was destroyed by the Imperium just due to the Venerans' sexual prowess. They designed it so that every girl has some type of stake in this rebellion. Also, as you go through and gather the girls, you do affect the world around you. You take down the biggest pirate fleet with fuckbots, invade the most heavily defended planet in the galaxy just to make a porno, kill one of the senators of the Imperium just to get a vibrator, and push the Tealies into having a massive orgy again. So the crew end up throwing the whole galaxy into whack, which is kind of fun. But in my opinion, the tail end of Act 3 and start of 4 is the greatest part of the story, because this is when you get Fortune, the Huntress, and General Blythe to join the crew. Each of these characters were introduced at the beginning of the story, with Fortune being the one who forced the captain on this journey in the first place, and has been the one setting up the missions. The Huntress was hired by Blythe to hunt down Dr. Lily, so she's a reoccurring thorn to the crew throughout the campaign. And Blythe is the leader of another terrorist organization that also wants to take down the Imperium, called the Waquaito. They were teased to join the crew the whole time. These characters, in my opinion, also get better development compared to the initial set of women. You get Fortune's family shenanigans while you're trying to track down Demi. With the Huntress, her and the captain go down together after a dogfight, and they are forced to work together to get off a planet. Finally, we have General Blythe, who is picked up by the captain after her benefactor tried to kill her when she was no longer needed. But she's an interesting character not only because you get to find out why she's so pissed off at the galaxy, but she's also related to the captain. She's like a mother figure to the captain when he was growing up, which is a nice way to build up the captain's backstory a bit. I love going through each of the story beats, slowly adding each of these characters to the roster. I felt that every new character added to the crew was more interesting than the last. You also get to see a lot more interaction between the crew now that it's almost fully formed. The space exploration gameplay is a cool complement to this too, because you can go around to random planets and find out that they relate to something that was mentioned offhand. Like you can find a planet that was a victim to the Cloy when they were doing the whole mass ethnic cleansing of the galaxy thing, or find a planet that relates to the plot in some way. You can even go to every planet that's mentioned in the story, like the homeworld of the Solars, New Vegas, or Venera itself. But in my opinion, that's the best part of the game. The endgame of Subverse is where it kind of all comes apart. With how the overall plot ends and how each of the crew members are handled, most of the crew don't get that much development and are just one note. If I have to hear about how much Sova likes to drink one more time, I'm punting that yordle bitch off into space. These girls don't really get an arc. It's more like the devs care more about their personality and archetypes rather than building a character. This problem mainly occurs due to how the dialogue system works in the game. They're either too short to really get that much out of them, and you only unlock like 5 options, which a portion of these dialogues are dedicated to building up the devotion quest, which is the dedicated mission that each of the girls get. I would say Demi's is the only good one. The rest are either just okay or just fucking pointless. I didn't need a devotion quest dedicated to Alicia making a porno fucking 300 aliens. I already knew she liked dick, so it doesn't grow her character at all and it just furthers her dreams at best. And Sova's the same way. The problem with the others is it just feels rushed and not satisfying. Is it cool to go to Venera with Killy to get a piece of clothing that was used in a mating ritual for the Venerans, so she can finally take part in a culture she never got to experience? Yes, but it feels rushed and not impactful. The rest of the devotion quests are like this too. I swear to God, half of these quests end with this happy, crappy bullshit of the captain saying how much insert girl means to him. I don't know if the devs are making fun of that type of media, but it just pisses me off because there is no connection to the captain. He always feels like a microphone that the girls just talk to during their dialogues, where his only job is to spit out one-liners. So saying shit like that just means nothing. Was the investigation gameplay supposed to give you this feeling of getting closer to the girls? The captain doesn't really partake in that. And we sure as hell ain't building up that connection through the other gameplays. I like the idea of a devotion system, but it just filling the bar doesn't mean the characters grow closer. I want to see them build up this bond, if the devs want to go that direction. That bar is the key that opens the gate to build the groundwork for these quests, and what it feels like it builds up to is rushed and pointless. The tone doesn't help with this either. I don't know if the devs want me to take these scenes seriously or die laughing, and it's probably both. I'd say the worst case is what they did with Fortune's father, because Fortune's father sacrifices himself to save Fortune and let the crew escape. So the man shoves a rocket up his ass and jumps down a tube to blow up the enemy. Was it needed for him to do that? No. But was it kind of funny? Yeah, but that's just because it was unexpected. This type of tone doesn't ruin the story for me because I can adjust my mind for that. The problem is I don't trust the devs when it try to do anything to get a joke off. It's bad when I start to think that Fortune and the captain are going to start fucking on top of her father's grave. But I wouldn't put it past the devs if they wanted to go that direction. Or the shift in character tone is also weird, because you have very little build-up to have these mental shifts in these characters. Like Blythe, Huntress, and Fortune all have these weird tone shifts, like one moment they all hate him, but once they join the crew it's like water under the bridge. Fortune goes from saying that she wished she could pick anyone else to lead the revolution, to saying that no one else could lead the revolution. Pretty fast, and with little exposition on that to justify it. Blythe and the Huntress are kind of similar. I honestly believe Blythe might be bipolar. The ending is the biggest disappointment. I have not mentioned his name yet, but the whole plot kind of revolves around a man named Erarch. He's a senator of the Imperium and is the one that set everything into motion in the story. Erarch is the person that teamed up with Fortune to initially form the Captain's Rebellion group. His goal seemed to be to want to reform the Imperium now that a new leader has taken the throne, given the old leader's genocidal habits. But the big twist, which really isn't a twist, is that Erarch has been playing multiple sides throughout the whole story. He is the one responsible for the development of the fuckbots, he founded and helped build the Waquital, he founded the captain's crew, and he convinced the old leader of the Imperium to fund sex weapon projects. All just so he can cause enough mayhem in the galaxy that he could sleep with Princess Celestina, who is the new leader of the Imperium, and make himself king. And that's the whole plot of the story, which I couldn't ask for anything better. It's perfect for this type of game. My main problem is just it feels like they force Erarch to be a villain because they spent the whole game building up the crew, so the devs just needed some type of final boss. Erarch was never portrayed as that great of a guy to the crew because he flat out said he would abandon them if they were caught, so he's looking out for number one, but the game also builds him up as a good guy that tried to save some of the races from the old ruler's wrath. So the plot goes something like this. The captain's crew would cause chaos while forming, which Celestina doesn't know how to handle, while the other leader just advises her to murder them, which she doesn't due to Celestina wanting to lead with kindness instead of force. So a rift keeps growing between them until the old leader calls a Senate meeting to dethrone Celestina, which Erarch uses the Waquital Come Death Star to cover the Senate, planet, and come. Then he would kill the captain and Blythe because no witnesses and fuck the princess. And that's what it boils down to, except for the last part, which doesn't work out for Erarch. It ends up with the crew going to Erarch's mansion and just killing him, which I felt nothing for during his death scene. The devs tried to lean on the age-old tradition of, what he did was bad, but he was just trying to make the galaxy a better place kind of bullcrap, which they just stuck to one extreme, either make him do all this shit just to sleep with the princess, or to save the galaxy. The weird middle that he ended up at just kind of made the scene feel soulless. Because, am I supposed to hate the guy or not? I don't know. The game ends shortly afterwards too, with the crew killing a sex bot mech that decided to be the final boss, the princess forgiving them of their crimes, and all of them holding hands and singing Kumbaya. The story ends so fast that my head's still spinning a bit. They even teased a sequel where the crew would team up with Celestina in a civil war where they would most likely be her versus the old ruler. I really like the crew gathering part of the game, but the amount of work you have to put into it just to see each of the girls' quests isn't really worth it, and the whole building up a crew for a cool revolution with the girls gets sidetracked and boiled down to just one mission with the whole team killing an asshole I didn't really care about. The game unironically gave me blue balls. I give the game about a 6.5 out of 10. It isn't bad, but it comes down to why you play these games. If it's for the gameplay, it gets stale really quickly, which isn't really good for the amount of levels there are available. But it does have some really cool set pieces. If it's for the porn, it's nicely animated, there's a ton of them, but you have very little control over the scenes, and they feel empty due to nothing else there to keep you engaged. And if it's for the story, it starts off strong, but has trouble with how to make everything land, making for a game that is very frustrating because it's just a lot of wasted potential. I know the game's still going to be getting updates, and that 1.0 isn't the end, but 1.0 does mean that the main story is done, which is the main reason I play these games, and I don't know if they can fix those issues, or even if it's an issue for them in the first place, because they released it like that. It's probably just me. I'm probably focusing too much on something that people don't give a rat's ass about. But with that, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next debauchery.